Hi there, you are about to learn how to solve equations using a very ugly formula right here. It may be ugly, but it's a formula that you are going to be using year after year after year, so really important that you understand how to use it. So when you're given a quadratic equation, such as this one right here, if you remember from the previous day, solving this equation gives you the solutions, and that is also the same as the x-intercepts of the graph, which are also called the zeros of the graph, where it crosses the x-axis, and another name is roots. So these are four words that all describe the same thing. It's the value of x that you would substitute into the equation to make the equation equal to 0. Now, factoring is typically the fastest way to solve quadratic equations, but not everyone likes to factor, and not all expressions can be factored, and that's where the formula comes in. If you don't like to factor, then use the formula. If the question can't be factored, then use the formula. But let me show you the difference between the two methods. If you were going to solve that by factoring, the first thing you'd have to decide on is what type of factoring it is. Hopefully, you see that it is a simple trinomial. So you're finding two numbers that multiply to give you negative 14 and add to give you 5. And those two numbers, remember, are your m and n. Those two numbers are positive 7, negative 2. And of course, you don't have to write this stuff down. You can do it in your head. So this factors to give you x plus 7, x minus 2. Then x plus 7 is equal to 0 when x is equal to negative 7, and x minus 2 is equal to 0 when x is equal to 2. So those are your two solutions to this equation. So if you were to substitute negative 7 into this equation, it would equal 0. If you were to substitute 2 into this equation, it would equal 0. So these are your two solutions. If you were to graph this parabola, the parabola would intersect the x-axis at negative 7 and 2. Now, if you were not good at factoring, you don't like factoring, or if that could not be factored, you can use the formula. This is how you use the formula. To start with, you need to know the values of a, b, and c. A is the coefficient of the quadratic term, and remember, when it's not showing, it's a 1. So the a value is 1. The b value is the coefficient of the linear term. In this case, it's 5. And the c value is the constant term, and in this case, it's negative 14. So the formula is negative b plus or minus, because remember, from the previous day, we're taking the square root. So whenever you take the square root, you need the positive value and a negative value. Under the square root sign is b squared minus 4ac, and it's all over 2a. So the negative in the formula is part of the formula, not part of the b. So you're going to substitute in 5 for the b. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. So that's the second step, is to substitute those values in. The third step is to use your calculator to figure out what is under the square root sign. So if you were to calculate 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 14, do that in your calculator, and that gives you 81. So you still have the negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 81, and then over 2 times 1, which is 2. The fourth step is to take the square root of this number, in which case square root of 81 is equal to 9. So we have negative 5 plus or minus 9 over 2. Now, if that is not a perfect square, for instance, let's say the number was 8, and you took the square root, you would get a decimal, and you would round it to 1 decimal place. So, one of the zeros is found using the plus, one of the zeros is found using the minus. So, 1 0 is at negative 5 plus 9 over 2, and the other one is found at negative 5 minus 9 over 2. You have to simplify the numerators first, so negative 5 plus 9 is 4, and 4 over 2 is 2. Negative 5 minus 9 is negative 14 over 2. Negative 14 divided by negative 2 is negative 7. And you can see here that's the same as those solutions. Now if you take a look at the solution, you can see solving by factoring is faster. Less time, less work, means more time for other questions on the test. But as I said, not everybody likes to factor, and not all expressions can be factored. The formula would work for all questions. And factoring only works for some of them. So again, this is called the quadratic formula, and what it does is that it solves the equation which means determines the zeros. Or the x-intercepts or the roots. So it's the solutions to the equation, or it's the zeros to this parabola right there if you were to graph it. Alright, so if there was anything here that you didn't understand, make sure you make note of it and ask your teacher tomorrow. So I put here for you to try, but I'll do one more together with you, and then you can try questions 2, 3, and 4. There are 4 types of solutions. 4 things that can happen when you solve these. So we're going to do question 1 together. So the A is the coefficient of the x squared term, which is negative 5. The B is the coefficient of the x term, which is 18. And the C is the coefficient of the constant term, which is 1. When you substitute that into the equation, you get x equals negative b, so it's negative 18. If the 18 was negative, you'd have negative 18. So that negative is part of the formula, not part of the b. Plus or minus square root of 18 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times 1, so b squared minus 4ac, all over 2 times negative 5, 2a. Now, the next step is to calculate what's under the square root sign using your calculator. 18 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times 1 is 344. So you have negative 18 plus or minus the square root of 344 over 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Next step is to take the square root of 344 and we're going to round it to 1 decimal place. So that is plus or minus 18.5 over negative 10. This is when you now separate it. So the first value of x is found using the plus. So it's negative 18 plus 18.5 divided by negative 10. Negative 18 plus 18.5 is 0.5. And when you divide that by negative 10, you get negative 0.05. The other solution is found using the minus. Negative 18 minus 18.5 over negative 10. Negative 18 minus 18.5 is negative 36.5. And when you divide that by negative 10, you get 3.65. So those are your two values of x. So what you're going to do now is try examples 2, 3, and 4. Those are a little bit wonky, so some interesting things are going to happen. And when you're finished, you can press play again and we'll give you the examples or the solutions. One thing I'll notice or I'll point out here is there's no constant term, so your C value is 0. So be careful about that. So try examples 2, 3, 4, press pause, and then come back to the video after to check your answers. Press pause now, please. Okay, welcome back to the video, and we're just going to check your answers. So reminding you that the C value was 0, so you have to substitute the 0 in for C. You don't just leave it blank. And you should get for your solutions 0 and 6. If you need to pause to take a longer look at that, watch your communication that you're using equal signs on each line, you're writing x equals. Make sure that when you substitute you're using the brackets. This line goes all the way across. All those things are good things to watch for communication. In example 3, what you should have found was the number under the square root sign was negative, which means there's no solution. So that would be one of those parabolas that does not intersect the x-axis. And what you should have found for example 4 was the number under the square root sign was equal to 0. And the square root of 0 is still 0, so it really doesn't matter if you add 0 or subtract 0. The answer is just going to be 6 over 2, which is 3. So that's going to be one of those examples where the vertex is on the x-axis because there's only one point of intersection with the x-axis. So if there's any of this that you don't understand, make sure you make a note of it and ask your teacher tomorrow. But I just want to remind you, the whole purpose of using the quadratic formula is to solve a quadratic equation or to determine the zeros of a parabola, which means the same thing. So I hope you enjoyed learning about it. This will be used frequently in grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. In grade 10, we will give you the formula on the tests and quizzes, so you do not have to memorize it. Thank you, and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.